The last call. The sirens howled through the night as paramedic Ryan Carter steered the ambulance down the deserted road. It was nearly 2 a.m., and fog had settled thick over the small town, turning the streetlights into blurry halos. Beside him, his partner, Emily Torres, double-checked the call details. Single victim, unconscious, reported at Blackwood House, she muttered. Ryan's stomach clenched. Blackwood House was infamous, an abandoned Victorian mansion at the edge of town, shrouded in tales of disappearances and death. No one lived there. No one should be calling 911 from there. Yet the dispatcher had confirmed. Someone had dialed. A weak, breathy voice, simply whispering, "Help me, please." As the ambulance pulled up to the rotting gates, the engine sputtered. Static crackled over the radio. The front door of the house stood ajar, revealing darkness beyond. A cold breeze drifted out, carrying a faint scent of decay. Emily grabbed her flashlight and stepped inside first. The air was thick with an eerie stillness. Ryan followed, pushing down the growing sense of dread. Then they heard it, a stretcher rolling, its wheels creaking against the wooden floor above them. Ryan's breath hitched. Did someone? A thud, a groan, a voice rasping in the darkness. "You came back." Suddenly, their ambulance siren blared outside, though no one had touched it. Emily grabbed Ryan's wrist. "We shouldn't be here." Too late. The door slammed shut behind them. A haunting return. The flashlight flickered as Emily shone it up the staircase. Dust swirled in the beam. The rolling sound continued, slow and deliberate, as if someone, something, was pushing a gurney above them. "Hello?" Ryan called out, his voice unsteady. "EMS, we got a call. If someone needs help, call out." Silence. Then from the second floor, a low whisper echoed. "I never left." A shadow moved at the top of the stairs. Emily yanked Ryan's arm, pulling him toward the door. She twisted the knob, but it wouldn't budge. "Damn it," she muttered. "It's stuck." A slow creak made them both freeze. The stretcher was coming down the stairs. Step by step, it rolled forward, as if guided by invisible hands. A body lay on it, covered in a dirty white sheet. The sheet was stained dark red near the head. Ryan and Emily stepped back, their breath coming in sharp gasps. The gurney reached the bottom step. The sheet twitched. Ryan's stomach turned. His hands trembled as he reached for the sheet. He shouldn't. He knew he shouldn't. But something compelled him to do it. He pulled it back and froze. The face staring back at him was his own. Ryan staggered backward, his heart pounding in his chest. "What the hell?" The corpse's eyes snapped open. It grabbed his wrist with ice-cold fingers. Emily screamed, grabbing a chair and smashing it down on the corpse's arm. The fingers loosened, and Ryan stumbled back. The body on the stretcher convulsed, its lips moving, whispering something fast and unintelligible. The radio on Ryan's belt crackled. A voice came through, his own voice, panicked and desperate. "Mayday! This is Ryan Carter, EMS Unit 13. We're trapped in Blackwood House. Please, someone respond." Ryan stared at the radio in horror. He hadn't spoken, but his voice was coming through it. Emily grabbed his arm. "We're leaving, now." She turned toward the door and stopped dead. Standing in front of it was a man in an old paramedic uniform, his face pale, his eyes hollow sockets. His name tag read C. Hargrove, EMS 13. "Ryan," Emily whispered, "EMS Unit 13 doesn't exist anymore." Ryan's breath came shallow. "What?" Emily's hand shook as she pulled out her phone. She searched frantically, then turned the screen toward Ryan. An old news article flashed across the screen. "Ambulance team disappears. Last seen at Blackwood House." Below it was a photo of two paramedics. Ryan recognized them immediately. It was him and Emily. But the date on the article, February 4th, 1995, was 30 years ago. The final call. Ryan's head spun. "This isn't real. We're alive." The ghostly paramedic, C. Hargrove, stepped forward. "You came back," he rasped. "You were never supposed to leave." Emily pulled at the door, screaming in terror. Ryan grabbed the stretcher, shoving it forward. The corpse on it suddenly sat bolt upright, its mouth stretching wide in a silent scream. The door burst open. Emily and Ryan ran, stumbling out into the cold night air. The ambulance was still running. Its lights flashed wildly, but no one was inside. They jumped in. Ryan floored the gas pedal. The wheels screeched, kicking up dust as they tore away from the house. Ryan's hands gripped the wheels so tightly, his knuckles turned white. He looked in the rearview mirror. Blackwood House was gone, vanished. Emily was gasping beside him, her hands trembling. Then the radio crackled again. A weak, breathy voice whispered, "Help me, please." The same voice from before. Emily and Ryan stared at each other, their faces pale. Then the GPS screen blinked. A new destination appeared. Blackwood House, EMS call in progress. Their ambulance turned on its own, the steering wheel twisting beneath Ryan's hands. As they screamed, the vehicle disappeared into the fog, and the town waited for the next 911 call that would never be answered. Curse of the Ambulance. The Last Ride. The rain hammered against the windshield as paramedic Jake Holloway and his partner, Lisa Carter, sped down the winding road. It was nearly midnight, and their ambulance siren wailed through the stormy night. "Dispatch, this is EMS Unit 22, ETA 3 minutes, Lisa said into the radio. The voice on the other end crackled with static. "Copy that, Unit 22. Be advised, the call came from Ravenswood Highway." Jake's stomach turned. Ravenswood. It was a stretch of road no one used unless they had no choice. There were too many accidents, too many unexplained deaths, and worse, it was the road where Ambulance 46 disappeared 10 years ago. The story was a legend among paramedics. An entire EMS crew vanished after responding to a call there. The ambulance was later found burned and empty, the radio still playing the last call they ever made. Unit 46 responding. Victim unresponsive. "I think he's waking up." "Oh, God. No." Then silence. No bodies were ever found. Now Jake and Lisa were heading straight toward the same cursed road. The man in the road. The rain fell harder as the ambulance approached mile marker 46. Jake spotted him first, a man standing in the middle of the road, drenched, barely visible in the storm. His head hung low, his arms limp at his sides. Lisa gasped, "He's not moving! Jake, slow down!" Jake slammed the brakes. The tires screeched, but the man didn't flinch. As the ambulance skidded to a stop, Lisa jumped out, grabbing a flashlight. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man lifted his head. His face was pale and soaked, his eyes dark hollows. Jake shivered. Something about him felt wrong. Lisa hesitated. "Are you hurt?" The man tilted his head as if confused by the question. Then he spoke. "Unit 22. You shouldn't be here." Lisa froze. "How do you know our unit number?" The man's lips curled into a smile. Then the ambulance engine shut off. Jake's blood ran cold. The dashboard went dark. The radio fizzled with static. The back doors of the ambulance swung open on their own. And from inside came a whisper. "Help me. Please." Jake and Lisa turned slowly. There was someone inside their ambulance. A figure sat on the gurney, covered by a body sheet. The sheet was moving, rising and falling, like whoever was underneath was breathing. Lisa's voice shook. We didn't put anyone in there. Then the sheet flew off. Jake and Lisa screamed. Lying on the gurney was a burned corpse, its face half melted, its hands curled into claws. But what made Jake's heart nearly stop? It was wearing an old EMS uniform. A rusty name tag glinted in the flashlight's beam. Hargrove, EMS 46. Lisa stumbled back. He's... The corpse's eyes snapped open. You took my place. The ambulance roared to life on its own. The back doors slammed shut, trapping Lisa inside. She pounded against them, screaming, but they wouldn't open. Jake pulled at the handle. Lisa, hold on! The corpse sat up slowly, its blackened fingers reaching toward Lisa. Get me out! She shrieked. The ambulance peeled away, its tires spinning, leaving Jake behind in the rain. Lisa's screams faded into the storm. Jake stood frozen as the red taillights disappeared down the cursed road. And then... The radio on his belt crackled. A voice, barely a whisper. Unit 22, you shouldn't be here. The road claims. Another Jake ran after the ambulance, but it was gone, vanished, just like Unit 46, 10 years ago. Trembling, he fumbled for his phone and called dispatch. This is Jake Holloway. Lisa's been taken. The ambulance. Something took it. Silence. Then a voice came through the line. A voice he recognized. Lisa's voice. Jake, don't come looking for me. His blood turned ice cold. Then the line went dead. And somewhere in the distance, an ambulance siren wailed, echoing through the night. The last ride. The town of Greystone was a place forgotten by time. A quiet settlement nestled between the dense woods and steep hills. It had a history of strange happenings, whispers of curses, ghostly sightings, and long-forgotten souls wandering in the dead of night. But nothing was more infamous than the cursed ambulance. Once a reliable vehicle for emergency services, the ambulance had been the pride of Greystone's paramedic crew. That is, until one fateful night 5 years ago. Ethan Mitchell, a young paramedic with a reputation for being brave, had answered a call in the dead of night. It was a simple accident on the outskirts of town. But when Ethan and his partner arrived, no one was there to help. There was no wreck, no injured victims, just the eerie sound of breathing in the back of the ambulance. His last radio transmission was barely a whisper. There's someone in the back, but I didn't pick anyone up. The transmission cut out, and Ethan was never seen again. His partner, Luke, had reported Ethan missing that night, but the investigation turned up nothing. The ambulance was found abandoned on a lonely stretch of road, the lights still flashing. The back doors were wide open, but there were no signs of a struggle, only the faint smell of something old, decayed and unnatural. For years, the ambulance sat in the station, gathering dust, untouched by anyone. It was a relic of the past, its eerie presence almost a myth. That is, until Lisa Henderson, a rookie paramedic with only a few months of experience, found herself alone in the station one rainy night. It had been a long shift for Lisa. The calls had been minimal, but it was late and the storm was getting worse. She was preparing to head home when the call came in. A car accident on the highway just outside town. Without a second thought, she grabbed her gear and rushed to the station. As she approached the parking lot, she noticed that the only ambulance available was the one that had been out of commission for years. Her heart skipped a beat. The ambulance that belonged to Ethan. Lisa hadn't heard the full story of what happened to him, just the rumors. She had always been told it was a tragedy, an unfortunate accident. But the talk around the station told a different story. People said the ambulance was cursed, that it had claimed Ethan's soul and never let go. Those who saw the ambulance after that night claimed it would sometimes drive itself to the scene of an emergency, only to disappear with whoever was inside. It was foolish, Lisa thought. The idea of a cursed ambulance was ridiculous. She had a job to do. She shrugged off the uneasy feeling creeping up her spine and climbed into the vehicle, making sure all the lights and sirens were in working order. The storm had made the roads slippery, and the call sounded urgent. Lisa started the engine, and the ambulance rumbled to life. She headed out into the night, the wind howling outside as the rain beat against the windshield. The highway stretched ahead, empty and dark, with only the occasional flicker of lightning to break the monotony of the drive. About halfway to the accident site, Lisa noticed something strange in the rearview mirror. A shadow. At first, she thought it was just her imagination playing tricks on her, but as the shadow grew clearer, she could see it. A figure sitting in the back of the ambulance. Her breath caught in her throat. The back doors were locked. She had checked before starting the engine. There was no way anyone could be back there. The figure remained still, too still. Lisa's grip on the wheel tightened. She turned on the siren, hoping to get the car moving faster, but no matter how hard she pressed the accelerator, the ambulance seemed to move at a glacial pace. Her eyes flickered back to the mirror. The figure was still there, its face obscured by shadow. Then the radio crackled to life. "Help me. I'm still in here." Lisa's blood ran cold. The voice was faint, distorted, but unmistakable. It sounded like a man, the same voice that had echoed through the radio on the night Ethan disappeared. Her pulse raced as she glanced at the back doors. They were still locked. There was no way anyone could have entered. She tried to focus on the road ahead, but the ambulance seemed to sway as though it were moving off course, as though the steering wheel had a mind of its own. "Please." The voice on the radio spoke again, this time louder and more urgent. Lisa's hands shook. She glanced at the rearview mirror again, and this time, the figure moved. It shifted, leaning closer to the window, its pale face now visible in the dim light. A sick grin spread across the figure's lips. She slammed on the brakes, but the ambulance didn't stop. The lights flickered. The wipers moved faster, as though controlled by something unseen. The road ahead twisted, turning into a long, dark tunnel, stretching on and on. Lisa felt as though the world around her was warping. "Stop! I need to stop!" she shouted. But the ambulance wouldn't listen. The figure in the back of the ambulance laughed, a hollow, rasping laugh that echoed through the cabin. Lisa's heart pounded in her chest. She pressed the brakes harder, but the ambulance kept moving forward, as though it were on some kind of autopilot. The radio crackled again. "You're on the wrong road, Lisa." The voice was unmistakable. Ethan. She felt a wave of terror wash over her. "Ethan!" she whispered, not sure if she believed it herself. The figure in the back of the ambulance leaned forward, its hands pressed against the windows as though it were trying to get closer. The ambulance sped up, the speedometer pushing into the red zone. The rain outside blurred into a heavy mist, and the headlights illuminated only an endless stretch of road. Lisa slammed her hand against the radio, trying to disconnect it, but it wouldn't stop. "You should have stayed away," Ethan's voice echoed. "You're going to join me, just like the others." Panic overtook her. She could feel the presence behind her growing stronger, the weight of it pressing down on her chest. The back doors suddenly rattled, as though something or someone was trying to break through. Lisa turned to look, but there was nothing there, only the reflection of her own terrified face in the mirror. Suddenly, the ambulance jerked to a halt. Lisa blinked. The road had disappeared. She was no longer on the highway. She was surrounded by darkness, with nothing but the faint outline of an old dilapidated hospital in the distance. The lights inside flickered weakly. She knew, deep down, that she was trapped. The ambulance had taken her somewhere far beyond the world she knew, to the place where Ethan and the others were now lost. The radio crackled one last time. "Welcome to the end, Lisa." Hours later, when a second crew was sent to look for Lisa, the ambulance was found on a stretch of road just outside of Greystone. The lights were still flashing. The engine was still running. But Lisa was gone, and the back doors were locked tight. And in the distance, the faint sound of breathing echoed in the wind. The haunted house at Ashford Hill. The house on Ashford Hill had always been the subject of whispers. It sat alone, abandoned for decades, its once grand walls now covered in ivy and moss. The windows were cracked, the door sagging on its hinges. The locals called it the Ashford Manor, but to anyone brave enough to speak of it, it was the cursed house. Decades ago, a family had lived there, the Ashfords, who were well respected in the town. They were kind-hearted, and nothing seemed out of place until one fateful winter. A tragic fire broke out one night, and the family perished in the flames, but the fire had left no trace on the house itself. It was as if the flames had never touched the walls at all. Since then, no one had dared to go near Ashford Manor, and anyone who did seemed to vanish without a trace. It wasn't until a new couple, Sarah and Luke, moved to the small town that anyone dared to mention the house again. They were young, enthusiastic, and unaware of the town's superstitions. Sarah, in particular, had always loved a good mystery. When she heard about the Ashford Manor, she was immediately intrigued. She dismissed the rumors as mere gossip, convinced that there was a logical explanation behind the disappearances. One evening, after weeks of convincing, Luke finally agreed to go with her to explore the house. They gathered their flashlights and set off toward Ashford Hill as dusk fell over the town. The air grew colder as they approached the manor. The wind howled through the trees, and the ground beneath their feet became uneven as they ascended the hill. The house loomed in the distance, its dark silhouette barely visible against the dimming sky. As they reached the front door, Sarah hesitated. It creaked open with a soft groan, as though it had been waiting for them. Inside, the house was eerily quiet, the only sound being their footsteps echoing on the old wooden floors. The once opulent decor was now faded and covered in layers of dust. Cobwebs stretched across the ceiling, and the air smelled of rot and mildew. The couple moved cautiously through the house, each room darker than the last. The stairs creaked underfoot, as though something heavy was moving above them. Despite the coldness in the air, Sarah couldn't help but feel a strange warmth in her chest, an unshakable sense of being watched. They entered the old parlor at the heart of the house. A grand fireplace stood cold, the remnants of the fire that had once raged there now nothing but ash. The walls were adorned with portraits of the Ashford family, their painted faces staring blankly into the room. But it wasn't the paintings that caught Sarah's attention. In the corner of the room stood an old ambulance. It was an antique model, dark and rusted, with the Ashford family name faintly written across the side. Luke noticed it too. "That's strange," he said. "I didn't know they were in the ambulance business." Sarah frowned, staring at the vehicle. There was something wrong about it, though she couldn't quite place what it was. The longer she looked at it, the more it seemed to move in the corner of her vision. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence. low and distorted. "Leave this place. You're not welcome here." Sarah jumped, her heart racing. Luke froze, his eyes wide with fear. They turned quickly toward the doorway, but no one was there. A cold gust of wind swept through the room, and the door slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. The temperature plummeted, and Sarah's breath turned visible in the icy air. A shadow darted past the window. Sarah rushed to it, trying to peer out into the growing darkness. "Did you see that?" she asked, voice trembling. Luke didn't answer. His eyes were locked on something behind her. When Sarah turned around, her blood ran cold. The ambulance was gone. The space where it had been was empty, save for the dusty floorboards. The portraits on the wall began to shift, their painted eyes following them, moving like they were alive. The whispers grew louder, becoming more urgent, more pleading. "Leave!" before it's too late. Suddenly, the house began to shake, the walls creaking and groaning as though something was trying to break through them. A dark figure appeared at the top of the stairs, its shape distorted and impossible to focus on. It descended slowly, its footsteps heavy, its presence suffocating. The figure wore the uniform of a paramedic, its face obscured by shadows. But the eyes, Sarah could see the eyes, glowing a sickly yellow. "You should have listened," the figure whispered. "The house calls for you now." The walls seemed to close in, the floor beneath them buckling and warping. The whispers became louder, overlapping, until they filled the entire room. Sarah screamed for Luke, but when she turned to find him, he was gone. In his place stood the figure in the paramedic uniform, a twisted grin stretching across its face. "He's with us now," it said, "and you will be too." As the figure reached out to grab her, Sarah fought back with every ounce of strength she had. She ran toward the door, slamming into it with her shoulder, but it wouldn't open. The walls seemed to pulse around her, growing tighter, suffocating her. Her vision blurred and she gasped for air. With one final push, she managed to break through the door, stumbling into the night. But as she looked back, she saw the ambulance again, parked in front of the house, its headlights glowing with an unnatural light. And in the back of the ambulance, she saw Luke. His face was pale, his eyes vacant. He raised his hand toward her, his lips parted as though to speak. But no sound came. The ambulance drove off into the darkness, disappearing into the fog. Sarah never spoke of what happened that night, but the townsfolk would remember. They'd heard the story of how the house called for them, and how it claimed them all. And every so often, someone would report seeing the ambulance on the hill, its headlights glowing in the distance, waiting for the next soul to claim.